To do a quick overview of this Thermobob installation on this 2001 KLR250, 250, not a 650. This bike ran very hot and cold. It would get hot, the thermostat would open, and then it would get cold, and then back and forth pretty quickly. So rinse and repeat over and over the entire time you're riding. It didn't matter if you're on the highway or in town. And so I looked into this and I just wanted more temperature stability for the engine, which I assume will make it last longer, which isn't super concerning to me, but it'll also make it get better fuel economy and maybe run a little bit smoother. But anyway, I've rambled. We'll get into what this thing is. The Thermobob itself is this black piece of aluminum that sits in between where the thermostat used to bolt straight up to the engine. The housing here bolts onto the device, which then bolts across to the engine. And that just provides an outlet, which is this brass fitting that goes into a piece of fuel line. As you can see, it says fuel line on it, but that's what I got with it. So we're using it. And then that goes down into an aluminum T that has pipe fittings on both sides here. And so what ends up happening is coolant from the left side radiator, driver's side radiator, I guess, which is a secondary radiator that's been cooled. It goes into here first, and then it goes down there, and then it comes back cold to the engine, and normally it goes into the water pump. Well, here we're pushing some of that warm coolant in front of the thermostat straight into the engine. And so the overall effect of what this does is it makes the engine run very stable temperature-wise. It takes a while. It actually takes longer for it to get up to temperature, but once it's at temperature, it stays there, which you'll see in the next video where I include the bike running for like 4 minutes while it's sitting still. So anyway, it's pretty simple to install, as you can see. Use the 3 Allen bolts they supply. It's got a rubber O-ring that goes from the engine to the device, and then he sends a new thermostat that's got its rubber gasket that I believe is 90 degrees Celsius, which is about 194.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And somehow that all ends up working out well, because I've been using it for about 70 miles worth of riding now. Last night it was about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and today it's like 92 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's doing good. And I do recommend the device. It's kind of expensive, but it does what it's supposed to do, as advertised. Pretty simple to install. These hose clamps are pretty cheap, all 4 of them that you get. And the tubing that goes between the 2 devices is just fuel line, which I assume is fine, but that's what you're getting for your $137. More importantly, does it work? And the answer is yes. My bike stays right about here once it warms up. That's where it stays the entire time I'm riding. And right now we're sitting here idling on a 92 degree day. And I'm guessing I'm gonna get better fuel economy because the bike used to fluctuate between about right here and all the way down to that circle, back and forth pretty quickly every time the thermostat would open and let cold water into the engine, basically. So this really stabilized the temperature the bike runs at, and I do think it's a worthwhile investment, even though it looks a little bit janky hooked up the way it's hooked up. I wish the company that made them would supply better hose clamps. And another thing you're going to want to watch out for is when you take a chunk out of this tubing, make sure not to take it as wide as this fitting, because it's tight. So you almost only need to take 3/8 of an inch out of there. You do need to take some out, otherwise it'll fit weird, but be careful there. Otherwise, this whole thing took me like, I don't know, half hour to drain the coolant, install this, fill it back up with coolant, and I was back on the road. So yeah, it does what it's supposed to do. And as you can see, my fan still hasn't turned on because the bike itself doesn't really get, it used to fluctuate all the way up into the red if you just sat here and idled. But now that we're kind of letting temperature, or constant temperature coolant flow through the entire system, it does a much better job of staying about right here. And because of that, it makes the bike run a little bit better. I can notice it when I'm out on the highway, especially because it used to run so cold on the highway since you're pushing wind through the radiator fins. But now it stays at this same temperature, and it makes the bike feel just a little bit smoother. It's not very noticeable, but it is smoother. So I do recommend it for these bikes that have these two radiators for such a small engine. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me the way it's set up from the factory, where it gets hot and cold so regularly, whereas now it just stays here at this constant temperature, which we will call like running temperature. The thermostat itself is 90 degrees Celsius, which equates to like 194 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what you get in the kit when he sends it with it. And I guess he's figured all this stuff out to know that that's where he wanted it to work. So this thing will still open. If this gets hot, the thermostat's going to open and we're going to get cold coolant pushing through here. So he does a really good job of regulating its temperature. We're now 4 minutes into this video and I've been idling the whole time on what I said was a 92 degree Fahrenheit day. And that's what's going on.